I'm going to record this meeting, and I hope that every speaker is fine with that. I see that Professor Stephen Weissman is here.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Trying to get my background in here for you.
Do you need any assistance?
Pardon
me? Do you need any assistance?
I think your instructions are good, but I'm looking for it in my list of backgrounds. It's not showing up, even though I did upload it. Let's see if I can do anything from here. There we go.
Oh, great.
All right, so let's see if this actually is working.
Yeah, it is easy to access when you press on your photo on your camera.
You don't see it? You don't see me?
Ah, looks perfect.
Okay. It's a little higher here. There you go.
So we are starting in 1 minute.
Yeah, I'll be back in just a minute. I'm gonna grab a glass of water. Good. Okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
All right, let's get started. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Julia, and I'm honored to welcome you to today's roundtable on energy solutions for Ukraine's winter resilience. And thank you for joining us today. And we know that we are approaching the winter months, and Ukraine's energy infrastructure continues to face critical challenges. Just today, we had the massive attack on the Ukrainian capital, and as we may expect and focus that this ongoing aggression and damage to key facilities will continue. And our goal today is to explore both immediate and long-term strategies to help Ukraine withstand the harsh winter ahead, while also looking at ways to build resilience for the future. And we are privileged to have an outstanding panel of experts with us who will share insights from different sectors and countries. Let me introduce the speakers. Julia Daviy will discuss the key challenges for Ukraine's energy system that Ukraine is facing right now. Hans-Josef Fahl will provide international perspectives on these challenges, and Roman Zinchenko will share practical ways Ukrainians can help themselves through the winter. And Stephen Weissman from UC Berkeley will offer the United States experience and some comments on the situations from his perspective as the lecturer at Goldman School of Public Policy of Berkeley and ex-director and co-creator of Energy Law program. Before we start, I wanted to give you some basic information where we are today and what is the scale of the Ukraine's energy challenge. We know that up to now, Ukraine's energy sector lost over 9 gigawatt due to Russia's terrorist actions, and most of maneuverable generation is destroyed. That means that all thermal and hydroelectric power plants have been damaged. That influences the entire energy system. Since the war started, Ukraine also protects the energy system thanks to the energy supply from Europe. However, now we see that there are the many terroristic attacks that are directed on the to destroy transformer substations that are responsible for importing electricity from Europe. And we see that the blackouts are getting worse, and there are predictions that 14 hours per day or even more without electricity could become a norm, even in the cities that are far away from the front line. And here is the forecast from the International Energy Agency from their recent report. They predict that this surpass between demand and supply, the difference between demand and supply will surpass over 5 gigawatt this winter, which is more than twice more compared to summer. With that, I wanted to pass the word to Julia Daviy, who is the chair of the non-governmental agency for sustainable development and investments, and has over 20 years of experience in Ukrainian energy. industry, and Julia will discuss the key challenges Ukraine's energy system is facing right now. Julia, I welcome your speech.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Julia, for introducing me. Thank you for inviting me to this event and for bringing much needed attention to Ukraine's current problems in the context of the energy challenges we face here in Ukraine, which is very important for us. And I would like to clarify some information you presented and start by saying that before the full-scale war, the installed capacity of the Ukrainian power system was over 55 gigawatts. Of course, with the thermal generation, the largest share, it was almost 50%, and the rest was nuclear, about 25%, hydro, 11%, and renewables, of course. As a result of Russian shelling of energy facilities in Ukraine, this energy mix has changed significantly. As Julia mentioned, this is consequences of 25 massive Russian missile and drone attacks on Ukraine's power system. 25 in general for the period in 2.5 years. Of course, we have lost capacities in different regions of Ukraine. And as well, I'd like to mention that many facilities we had on the territory, located on the territory that has been occupied by Russia. And let's speak about challenges. The coming winter promises to be the most difficult in Ukraine, and it's true. We hear about this every day. We see and read many titles of articles, and we prepare for this. We are Ukrainians, people and consumers, industrial consumers, etc. According to Ukrenergo forecast, as Julia mentioned, and I would like to confirm this information, that Ukrenergo as well forecasting that the generation shortages or deficit could reach 2 gigawatts or even more if the temperatures are sufficiently low. They mentioned about minus 15 degrees. I'd like to remind you that the permitted electricity imports are currently less. It makes 1.7 gigawatts. Even if we add to this the emergency aid from European countries, it's not enough as well, because it makes only 200 megawatts. So 1.7 gigawatts plus 200 megawatts is not equal to gigawatts of shortages we could have. Of course, since the summer, we have been hearing information that electricity imports capacity may be increased, but I don't know any information about the agreement process with our European colleagues on the context of this increasing this imports capacity up to, for example, 2 gigawatts or 2.3 gigawatts. We don't know about this exactly. So what is the main conclusion? In case of significant generation shortages in the power system, Ukrainians will again return to power outages. And unfortunately, the experience of this summer, my own experience, for example, we suffer up to 8 and even more hours a day without electricity. And this is in summer. We realized that in the winter season, it could be longer. So the period without electricity could be longer, and it would be difficult to overcome this challenge. The main recipe of avoiding such negative consequences has been discussed for 2 years, really. It is to decentralize the energy system. of course, but only in July this year, the government adopted a strategy for the development of distributed generation until 2035. And the government introduced the simplifications for such projects implemented. I have to note that the quality of this strategic document is high. This is my opinion, really. However, we don't see a significant numbers, significant quantity of new generation plants being built, unfortunately. And I don't know how to bring back to the energy system the capacity we have lost so soon. In such way, I really don't have a real recipe how to do it so fast. So the situation could be complicated for many cities in Ukraine, really, because the heating season will start after 2 weeks, maybe in November for some cities, but it is coming soon. So this is my main points I'd like to share with you, and I hope that it could be a good introduction for the further to continue this dialogue today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julia, for the overview of the challenges facing Ukraine's energy system. And it is absolutely clear that the situation is complex. And at the same time, there are some potential paths forward. Next, we will hear from Hans-Josef Fall, renowned global international scale level expert in energy and energy transition. And he will give us an international perspective on how Ukraine's energy challenges are viewed and approached globally. Hans-Josef, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you for the invitation for this very important discussion, because we must look for helping Ukraine to come safe over the winter time and come to peace and security in all levels in your society. It is not easy, we all know this. An aggressor from Russia is attacking Ukraine and especially the energy system. Since decades, independent energy experts warn of a dependency of centralized energy production. They could see it. Independent energy experts are such one who do not have any business interest in fossil or nuclear. But mostly the last decades, the energy system all over the world from governments was driven by the fossil and nuclear business people. And that's the situation why we are now in the situation in Ukraine that it is very, very dangerous for this winter time. When Russia will attack the 3 remaining operating nuclear power stations, then you must fear for a blackout by itself in Ukraine. This shows exactly that we have in this winter time only the chance to defend the energy infrastructure. But you must work very, very fast on constructing a decentralized energy system. That's important. Much too long times are over. I personally and others proposed it in Verkhovna Rada since years to go to decentralized renewable energy system without any compromise. What the Ukraine government now has a proposal for more decentralized energy system is good, but not enough, because parallel to the decentralized development is also the target for new nuclear power stations. What will it help? In the next 20 years, never it will come. Nuclear power is too expensive, it is too dangerous, and it takes too long time to come from planning periods to operation. What you have to go is decentralized energy, and this is renewable energies. Solar with batteries, wind power, cogeneration with bioenergy in the winter time to bring renewable energies with heat and electricity, decentralized cogeneration with vegetable oil, what you have plenty amounts on your fields, or with pellets from woods, or with gas from woods. Additional small hydropower is very important. In Carpathian region, for example, you have big potentials. Geothermal could help on some places. Heat storage are important, and plenty more. How to come to a fast investment? First is to see renewable investment is now the cheapest option of energy investment all over the world. The IRENA report from last week shows that the renewable investment into solar and wind is half so cost intensive than into coal or nuclear. Why does anyone go away to fossil and nuclear? It's too expensive. And when we look to the speed, how fast we can come to a new energy system, then decentralized renewables have the fastest possibilities. Look to China. They double investment into renewable energies every 2 years. And we can see that China can have in 2030 500% renewables when they go on with this speed. They show how fast it can go. So therefore, you must concentrate only on renewable energies, decentralized all sorts, plus storage systems and others. The cheapest option means, and this is a result of eco-action from last week, they published it, you would need 12 billion euros. That's not a lot because European Union can help. And the best option is to make a get-fit system in Ukraine. Everyone who will invest into renewable energies will firstly take it by his own consumption. And the overflow, what he produces, he should feed up the grid to help other ones to have renewable energies and to pay it with a feed-in tariff. And the more cost for the electricity consumers, you could less pay from European Union what they want to give with subsidizing to help the Ukraine system. This would be a best option. And my advice is, since plenty years and more go fast to renewable energies. And this is not only on the fields, wind power. You can go into the cities. We have in Germany a high development of balconia modules. In Kiev, you have plenty balconias on your high houses. The people can bring modules there, a battery to balconias, and then when the grid is attacked, they have light during night when the house is not attacked. And therefore, decentralized solutions are very fast. We want to help from European countries, and the Ukraine government should go this way only to decentralized renewables without any compromise, no fossil and no nuclear power stations. Thank you.
Thank you, Hans-Josef, for sharing your global insights. And now let's shift to a more localized view. Roman Zinchenko, co-founder of Green Incubator, will speak about how Ukrainians themselves can play a role in overcoming the energy difficulties this winter. Roman, please go ahead.
Dear Julia, dear colleagues, thank you for the great opportunity to discuss this important question. And following on the points raised by Julia Usenko and Hans-Josef Fell, I want to address the very interesting nature of transformation which is happening now in our energy system. So, like, paradoxically, when Russia launched the world's largest attack on the energy infrastructure, because we are currently in the situation of the energy system's destruction the Europe hasn't seen since World War II. What Russia also launched probably the largest deployment of decentralized energy assets in Europe for, I believe, in decade. Because when the first attacks on the energy system started and the first year of the war, full-scale invasion, Ukrainians imported over 1.5 gigawatt worth of different decentralized energy assets, not just renewables, also some generators and other things. But this year, we're probably bringing into the country another 2 gigawatts that would go into operation, into production. And I believe that the major factor currently for the keeping the lights on and keeping the homes warm is energy self-reliance, is mutual support and neighborly networks, and also is availability of financing. Because currently there is a number of, let's say, inefficiency in the incentives that are available for Ukrainians to face the cold winter. And our position is that when we are to stimulate some of the major changes within the energy field, the biggest innovations we need are not technologies. Technologies are already present, technology are already there. But these major changes coming in the regulatory field, in the financial field, and in the people, human capital field. The challenge we are seeing now, first in the human capital field, all the people involved in the installation of distributed energy resources are booked till the new year, building the facilities for the new player, for the people that were forced to develop their own generation, both industrial and in household. This is point one. In the regulatory field, well, Russian attack, they pushed the major transformation of Ukrainian energy regulation, making it way more inclusive. But still, there's a huge delay. There is a huge inconsistency in financing. So, for example, I'm currently working on upgrading my home energy storage. But since our family owns the apartment in the city, not the private home, we are not able to get the financing for the home installation of inverter and battery. That's a part of the Ukrainian legislation, and that certainly should be changed. So I'm currently transitioning from the AGM batteries to the lithium ferrum polymer batteries. That would probably be my weekend task, installing it myself. Luckily, I have some capabilities in this field. But what is really essential for Ukrainians to survive this challenging winter is open and transparent communication. Unfortunately, there is a chance that the warm bath approach would have a risk of turning into ice bath for many Ukrainians who are trusting a little bit too positive outlook. I'm not into the mode for positive outlook. I'm supporting the efforts of those Ukrainians who are building their own solar installations, their own storage systems, and we actually facing the revolution of decentralized energy resources and renewables happening under the radar, behind the meter, but currently happening. The major milestones we see now is that in the recent week, the first condominium, the first OSBB in Ukraine, got official recognition as the active consumer with the ability to send to the grid. So for Ukrainians listening to me, you should say that self-reliance, neighborhood networks, and access to financing is critical for making sure the lights are on and the homes are warm. And if you are reluctant to invest into this distributed energy resources, into this your own energy security, just count the cost of your downtime, just count the cost of your business day when you're not working, and you will understand the economics. And if we are speaking about the further changes, what we need to be solving this problem in the long run, that is further integration of these gigawatts of energy resources Ukrainians are installing now for themselves. And the big task is making them online integrated resources that would require, first, that would require the different structure of the grid. And the grid should become smarter and more friendlier for this decentralized energy resources. And also, we should rethink our tariff models and enable a flexible pricing and stimulate those who would be willing not just to build their own energy safety, but who would be willing to become the new class in Ukraine, the new energy bourgeoisie, people who've invested into smaller scale generation, but are able to use smarter dual-way Ukrainian grid, either to export the renewable electricity or sell it to the other consumers in Ukraine. So I see the positive, actually, I see some of the positive trends here, despite the challenge is huge. But like Schumpeter once said, we need creative destruction for innovation. Strangely, Russian rockets are a component for this creative destruction, but Ukrainians are innovative and they're very actively innovating in the field of renewable energy, decentralized energy, and helping themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Roman. Yeah, I agree with you that Russian military gave the Ukrainian energy system the unfair advantage to deploy the latest innovations and switch to renewable energy. Yeah, and your points on local resilience and community-driven solutions are very timely. Lastly, we will hear from Stephen Weissman from UC Berkeley. Stephen Weissman, I will share the American experience, the Californian experience, and how it relates to Ukraine's situation. Stephen, over to you.
The microphone is not on.
Try it again, please.
Okay, I apologize for that. Is my microphone on now?
Yes.
Yes.
And can you see the slides as well?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I'll start again. But I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to join this conversation today, and for me to be able to learn from people who are the real experts on the ground, both in terms of what's going on in Ukraine and more generally in Europe. And I don't pretend that California has anything to teach specifically to people in Ukraine how to handle these situations. What I wanted to do quickly was kind of move through three different situations which have created challenges in California that have led to various kinds of new strategies and innovations in California, many of which, or maybe even all of which, have already been considered and adopted in the Ukraine. But obviously, we have not had to face these challenges during a devastating war. So there's really there's no parity in terms of our understanding of how to deal with these things. With that humility added in, let me just sort of quickly talk about some various things that we've had to face. The first of the three challenges was in the very beginning of the millennium in 2000 and 2001, California, which was experimenting with competitive energy markets, faced a collapse of its wholesale electric market. It was in two forms: partially an economic collapse because the marketers that were bidding into competitive energy markets found ways to price their energy so high that it almost was unusable. But also on top of that, they were helping to push the prices up by withholding generation. So we had artificial shortages that were created, and there were a number of things that California had to do to try to deal with the situation. First, because the utilities themselves were not able to manage the crisis, a state agency which was very familiar with buying huge amounts of energy, it was the state water agency, took over the purchase of power for the whole state, and then conveyed some of that power to the utilities for distribution. Some of these things obviously are more long-term solutions. There are a few things that could be addressed in the time frame that's available in Ukraine for this winter. But of course, the creation of a new agency to actually start building and procuring new power sources was something that was going to be a longer-term solution. This was created through law in California, and I'll also tell you that within a year it collapsed because it really proved to not be necessary in the California situation. But this is an option that can be used even for, I think, encouraging the all-important development of distributed energy resources, not just central station resources. There were transmission constraints that required fairly quickly moving in and expanding the capacity of the system to move power from the south to the north and vice versa. And again, even with a long-term solution that's going to involve a near total emphasis on distributed resources and the kind of things that Roman was talking about and Heinz Joseph, in the short term, it's going to be necessary to be able to rally the resources as well as possibly can occur. There was also created for the various utilities and other entities that were responsible for meeting customers' demand was that they start developing resource adequacy plans where they could say as much as a year in advance, here are the resources that we plan to have dedicated to meet our customers' load. And there also was the creation of a new system where localities could take on the challenge of trying to meet the demand for the people within their jurisdiction. You'd still have the traditional utility approach for wires and poles delivery, but you would have the local governments actually pushing for development, for instance, of more locally positioned energy sources. And so this was one type of challenge that was faced, this collapse of the energy market. There were other structural changes that had to occur in the way the markets were designed, but I don't think that's necessarily relevant for this particular situation. A second kind of challenge that's been faced, and maybe this is a little bit closer to some of the challenges that are being faced in Ukraine, is that there have been devastating wildfires in California. So far this year, 1 million acres have already burned, and we're not even in the most intense months of the wildfire season in California, which has actually now become almost a year-round season because of climate change. And so there are things that have been done to reduce the likelihood that utility equipment is going to trigger wildfires, and also to ensure that the equipment remain more reliable throughout these seasons. And so there have been a number of things that have been required. First, the utilities have to create wildfire mitigation plans that are presented to the government and approved or changed on an annual basis, saying these are the things we are going to do to make our system more reliable and less likely to be triggering wildfires. Of the top 10 most devastating wildfires in California's history, about half of those have come from problems with electric equipment. And I can imagine that Ukraine is experiencing more and more problems with its delivery systems as well. So part of the process is, of course, to identify the most vulnerable delivery systems, delivery lines. In terms of transmission, I assume that transmission is located above ground in Ukraine. I don't know to what extent the distribution system is undergrounded. I've noticed when I started visiting Europe that there was a far greater percentage of undergrounded distribution lines in Europe than there were in the United States. And it makes sense because of what was experienced in World War II and a need to recreate infrastructure and also to deal with the potential for future wars that could be quickly taking out above ground equipment. Strategic use of undergrounding has been an important response in the wildfire areas, both to try to prevent wildfires and also to reconstruct equipment after wildfires have destroyed existing lines and poles. There's been the use of forced power cutoffs, much like the rolling brownouts, perhaps, but first identifying the most vulnerable areas and then in anticipation of potential problems at various times, when the wind is blowing, when the humidity is low, when the temperatures are very high, cutting off power supply in some areas to avoid the likelihood that a broken line could ultimately trigger a wildfire. Going through the system and stiffening the lines by making sure that there's a good separation between the lines, that they can't come together during a heavy wind incidents, for instance, and insulating, putting in insulating conductors where previously there had been uninsulated conductors, all ways to reduce the likelihood that these wildfire conditions could lead to lines breaking and triggering wildfires. Also probably most important of all is for this stiffening the system has been to install automatic cutoff devices that at the first sense of any disturbance will locally isolate the problem by cutting off that area from the rest of the grid temporarily. Now, in terms of other speakers have been commenting, I think, about the need to emphasize more of a community approach to solving some of these problems. We're starting to see that in California with the construction of microgrids, where you have perhaps a combination of solar and battery backup, or even other kinds of power backup, where you link together several people or a broad community, and then have the ability to isolate that area from the rest of the grid when there's a broader outage. This is not necessarily cheap. It's not necessarily entirely proven for a large-scale build-out, but we're starting to see that in California, both in terms of communities trying to put themselves in a position that when the utility decides to cut off power supplies to help prevent wildfires, that they've got the ability to continue to meet their needs and also to create greater reliability generally. So wildfires, I think, have been a major type of problem that had to be addressed. And then finally, the other challenge area is just managing system peak, which becomes much more challenging as we experience the near-term effects of climate change. And we've got more intense, longer duration, for instance, heat waves during the summer. And so the utilities and the regulators have had to use a number of tools in order to get to try to deal with this problem. Somebody in California at one point commented about the fact that historically the way utilities would provide power would be to predict load, predict demand, and then manage their generating resources. And now more and more we're getting to a point where we need to predict generating resources being available and then manage demand in order to in order to have it meet what's actually available in terms of resources. One of the easiest things to do in the short run, perhaps, one of the things that's been least expensive from a centralized perspective, but surprisingly effective, has been calling for voluntary reductions in demand during times when very high peaks are being anticipated. Now, I would imagine that in a place like California, there's much higher demand for electricity on a per capita basis than there might be in a place like the Ukraine. So this resource might be more limited in terms of what could be done there. But we found that when people are notified that there's a need for a temporary cutback for various reasons, people respond to that. Beyond that, the use of rolling brownouts, which has already been discussed, I don't know how the priorities are established for doing that in Ukraine. In California, there was a period where there was an effort to identify each of the distribution circuits and transmission circuits, and understanding where the priorities are and how to design a strategy for rolling brownouts that could try to bring the least harm to everybody by being able to rotate the brownout areas fairly quickly. But beyond that, also identifying the most critical places where cutting off power just can't be supported, like circuits that support hospitals and things like that. Using other kinds of ways to encourage people to reduce or change the timing for their demand. There's been some mention already of variable pricing. That's one important tool. I think another one is to consider encouraging various sources of demand, whether they're industrial or commercial or residential, to combine the information about their load, about their demand, and offer to be able to reduce their demand during critical times, and maybe in exchange for some kind of financial incentive. But again, this is the kind of thing that doesn't require a lot of infrastructure, a lot of changes between, let's say, now and the worst parts of the winter, but I think it's something that could be organized on a broader basis. And then, of course, in terms of distributed resources, we started to have more of an emphasis on developing community-based solar, where people may not have solar on their rooftop, but instead there may be an installation that's close to a community and can serve that community. And it's very much, I think, similar to what we discussed previously related to microgrids. So I think I'm going to stop there. I just wanted to offer this particular survey of some of the things that we've been looking at. There are other things as well, but I think this is probably enough to try to digest in the short run. So thank you for offering me an opportunity to present these things.
Thanks so much, Stephen, for providing this valuable perspective. What I personally love about California's approach, which is highly technological approach and cutting edge legislative approach. And what we have here, which is the direction of virtual power plants, the emerging direction, highly potential and highly potential for Ukraine. Energy storage, we know that the Californian energy system is so much backed by energy storage capacities, which are over 25 gigawatt, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And at the same time, these kind of solutions, they could help Ukraine, but they are expensive solutions. So how to find the balance between expensive solutions and the need to solve the problems in the short run in the war-torn economy? That is the question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I noticed that there's also a question, yeah, in the, I guess that came from you, but it was the ability to isolate a problematic part of the energy system is an important factor for stability. Do you think that its creation of such a distribution system consisting of clusters could be a model for the Ukraine? Again, I'm not directly familiar with the design of the grid in the Ukraine, but I think there's no doubt that that this kind of system could be created. I imagine that Ukraine is facing the unfortunate opportunity of needing to reconstruct systems sometimes very quickly when there have been attacks and there's been a destruction of some of the infrastructure. When that's being done, I guess the question is, could the grid operators be ready in advance, have plans in advance for how to move into an area and reorient the circuits in relatively short term, so that there could be a redesign that could happen at a time when there needs to be reconstruction anyway. Now, in order to get to that point, I think one of the important elements is to actually have a clear understanding of one's distribution system. And that might seem self-evident, but I think we've noticed in California that the utilities historically have not carefully monitored and planned for the expansion of their distribution circuits. It was more circumstantial. You'd say, oh, well, let's see, we've got some rooftop solar in this neighborhood now. We're going to have to put in a larger transformer in order to serve that. I think that to be in the optimal position to be able to respond to these uninvited, unfortunate, but very definite changes that are occurring in the system is to have that kind of plan in place as quickly as possible. So I don't know if that's helpful. And Julia, if that doesn't address your question, please let me know what else I should comment on.
Absolutely, thanks so much. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I agree that you said that the ability to isolate a problematic part of the energy system is an important factor for the stability of the entire system, and that's actually what we are talking about the distribution. And do you think that the creation of such a distributed system, considering of clusters, can be a model for Ukraine? And this is the question to all the speakers.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what others have to say.
Hans Josef, I know that you are the ideologist of the distributed energy system. We have been spoken about this for, I would say, decades, because probably the first time we spoke about that, and that was not actually the first time, but 12 years ago in Kyiv, when we spoke about the distributed energy system, that sounded like something like out of this world. But today it is the need for Ukraine.
I think most important is that you look to your legislation framework. We had some discussion now in the chat, and I could find one example. Hospitals and schools are not allowed to fit in the grid when they produce solar energy. What is it crazy? You have hundreds similar obstacles against renewable investment. And therefore, you need an expert task, not only for solar, as well as for wind, distributed cogeneration, small hydro, batteries, as well as electric cars. They belong to it to make independent from centralized oil pipelines and plenty others. You must create such an expert group for the Verkhovna Rada and for the government to remove all the obstacles for the investors for renewable energies. When you have obstacles in your legislations, plenty of the investors cannot invest. And the obstacles are a result of decades-long offensive of the fossil and nuclear business people to prevent for decentralized investment into renewables. Look to the basic of the European Union. There is, for example, a law that energy sharing must be allowed for everyone. This means to distribute your solar and wind and biogas energy with your neighbors, and not only with the direct neighbors, with 10 or 20 or other neighbors. So this energy sharing is very important to come fast to energy security by a distributed and decentralized energy system. Remove all the obstacles in your laws, then it can go much faster than until today.
Thanks so much, Roman. I know you have something to say.
Yeah, well, just recently, President Zelensky signed into the law the act on the smart grids, which actually allows the formation of the energy island. And the biggest task now is the as fast as possible implementation of the energy islands component in the code of the distribution system of Ukraine and other relevant documents. Well, while we think it's important because the human civilization grows in islands. These islands are called cities, villages, but there are certain points of the concentration of the energy consumption. And like in the old school model, there was a tradition of hyper-concentrated generation points and then sending to these consumption islands. With the current development of technologies, every island of civilization, every village and every town and city, they can have at least critical components of the civilization. They are powered by the domestically produced energy. But to make this a reality, so like when we had a real blackout and we did have a system disaster in our grid in November 2022, for me, one of the most challenging moments was then my cell phone lost signal. So, and I was in Lviv at the moment, no running water, no electricity, no cell coverage. The only working means of communication was the old school wire phone that we used for communication with the external world. So the point is that with the current model of the grid administration, many communities that have their own local generation would still be cut off and their generation would not be able to work because they are just too small for Ukrenergo, for our TSO to see them. Yeah. So for that, we need smaller and smarter grids able to operate and power, for example, at least critical thing. Local police station, local hospital, local water utility, local fire brigade, local internet provider, local cell tower. So they are getting the power and they are getting the opportunity to operate. And what is really important, I'm really grateful for Mr. Kulik for his comment regarding the reliable or less reliable sources. So this is the big discussion. But what is really important here, I think we are currently in the situation where we shouldn't discriminate the energy sources, and where we have the biggest speed of deployment and the biggest scale of deployment. This could be the good solution. Surely the winter resiliency on the gas-fired power plants would be fine, but the same situation is the biomass-fired power plants and other things. And we do have the cases of small communities that do operate several megawatts of the biomass-fired power plants, as well as 100 kilowatts at solar, and they would need storage and other smarter grid components to survive. So that can be a paradigm shift and access to the new grid model, where certainly we are limiting to certain point the electricity supply, but we are able to provide the critical components of our life with the supply, and also creating local energy economy. And finally, the final moment in this story is actually by rapidly deploying the most mass-produced component of energy infrastructure, which is smart meters. It is possible also to implement not a strict brownout. Stephen, thank you very much for this term. I forgot it in English. So not just cutting off the whole streets and whole districts, but doing the energy limiting, and by this mean providing at least some basic electricity supply for households. And trust me, since I'm tracking the energy data on my home inverter, our apartment and household of 3 is capable to live, play, and have fun, consuming just 200 watt with the internet, light, ventilation, and other systems, but not using the electrical boiler or electrical stoves. So that is enough, and I would see many people would agree to cut their consumption, but not be completely cut off from the grid. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roman. And yeah, we are out of time. I will leave just 2 minutes for Hans-Josef to, because just to finish with this topic. I know this is just a vast discussion, a vast topic, and thanks so much to everyone who contributed to this discussion today. As the speaker and as a participant, I see the discussion in our meeting chat. Unfortunately, we don't have much time to discuss everything and every problem that we touched upon today. Just for final remarks, maybe Hans-Josef, I know that you wanted to add some maybe response to Roman's statement, and after that we will wrap up.
Yes, I only want to underline the importance of reliability. When you invest into a mix of renewables plus storage systems and decentralized grid investment, smart grids and others, you can get a highly secure and independent energy demand. That's the one point. You can increase your self-consumption from your own system. And the second, because of reliability, is when we see only investment into single investment, only solar here and wind there and others, at the end you will come to the system what we have in Germany at the moment. We have a lot of increase of solar investment and too less of reliability, too less batteries and others combined with it. And we must fear now, when this goes on, we can have much more electricity only from solar in times, in summer times, in holiday seasons when we have less demand, that we cannot manage it. And we must fear a blackout because of too much solar electricity into the grid. This is not the target, and therefore I will pay your attention for this point. Look to the reliability, the mix of renewables and distribution and storage systems. That's important.
Thank you so much. And as we wrap up, I want to express my deep gratitude to all our speakers for sharing their experience, their insights, and to our participants. I see the participants from Nova Ukraine. They have done a lot supporting Ukrainian communities and Ukrainian public sector. I'm sure that we need to continue this discussion, and the challenges Ukraine faces this winter, they are enormous. So the discussion should go on. And I believe that through collaboration, innovation, strategic planning, we can work together to find solutions that will not only help us survive this immediate crisis, but also build a more resilient energy system for the future. Let's keep this conversation going and continue to push for the challenges needed. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to our future events. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck for you.
Thank you very much for putting this great group together. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you.
Appreciate your participation.